We're joined now by Matthew Wright and Janet Street-Porter to discuss today's top stories. Welcome to both of you. So let's start with this first of all, shall we? Police seek protest ban after 23 officers were injured in the London rallies. John Apter, the head of Police Union for England and Wales, has called for an emergency law during COVID-19 pandemic, which would mean banning the protests. Is that something you can do? Janet, can you ban protests?
I don't think you can. I think you've got to allow free speech. It's difficult. It's a difficult decision. But once you institute a ban, when do you decide to take it back? So although the behaviour of the people on these marches has been disgraceful on both sides, and obviously I deeply regret what's happened to the police, and no one should treat the police like that when they are only trying to do their job. But unfortunately, it would not be a good idea to ban marches because it will just lead to rioting and more social disorder. So you can't start something. You've just got to use more police and contain the situation.
Matthew, when we all started this lockdown and we suddenly realised that we were all facing something we'd never faced before, and we were all going to be nicer to each other, and we were all going to go through it together. And now here's an opportunity, something appalling, truly appalling. An execution on the street happens in America, and we could once again reunite, learn all the things we've learnt about ourselves in lockdown, but then suddenly our ugly side comes out again.
Well, to put it in context, I'm 55 and I've been aware of racism in this country since my early teens. There's been really bad periods, late 70s into the 80s, times when things looked a little bit more hopeful in the 90s. And then I think it's really interesting. 4 or 5 years ago, we start having conversations. People from the right wing start saying, oh, you know, we can't talk about immigration. If we do, we're racist. And it strikes me that in a very short period of time, 4 years, maybe 5 years, we've gone from discussions like that to scenes of outright far-right thuggery on the streets of the UK, where our newspapers don't even call them out as far-right racist thugs. They call them pro-statue protesters. I've never heard such Orwellian nonsense in my life. And as for Apter, he's quite right to say that perhaps new laws may be needed to control demonstrations. But as far as I'm aware, all those demonstrators, whether they were, certainly all the ones that were causing trouble, were all breaking social distancing rules at the moment anyway, and social justice as well. But they're all breaking social distancing rules. So they're not paying any attention to the rules and the guidelines laid down anyway.
I mean, how low have we fallen? I mean, so many things that just saddens you to your core. The story of the man who urinated at the Westminster Memorial dedicated to PC Keith Palmer, an officer stabbed whilst on duty at the Westminster terror attack on the 22nd of March 2017. He has been jailed for 14 days for that. But Janet, these scenes that we're seeing now, things that you just were unthinkable, that are actually there for us all to witness.
I know they're unthinkable, but I look back during my TV career, when it started in the 70s, I made films about rock against racism. There were marches then against racism. Since then, we've had the Macpherson inquiry, we've had endless inquiries, endless tribunals, endless government initiatives to help diversity. And all of these lawyers and legal all the money that's gone into inquiries makes me just so angry. And I can completely see why people of colour have had enough. I can see why they've had enough. It doesn't justify breaking the law, but to read in the paper this morning, Boris Johnson announcing another inquiry through his column in the Daily Telegraph, which you have to go on a paywall, pay to read, I think is disgusting. We don't need any more inquiries. I mean, David Lammy was on the radio this morning and he was saying exactly the right thing. Let's just put into practice all the things we've already agreed.
Final word on that one, Matthew.
Well, I totally agree with what Janet said. I get the feeling, we might talk about Grenfell as well, that we tend to use, politicians like using inquiries and discussions as a way of never actually doing anything at all. Grenfell, 3 years down the line, nothing has happened. I do worry that when we have a Prime Minister that has used overt racist language, describing the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo as pickaninnies and watermelon smiles, as a white man, I find it difficult to believe that our Prime Minister really wants to crack down on racism. Heaven knows what black and brown people feel about it.
Let's talk about Grenfell. You did mention that. The virtual memorial service held on Sunday for the 3-year anniversary. And there was a really, I mean, if lovely is the right word to say, but it was a nice way for us to commemorate the moment. We're asked online to put our tellies on, and there was a green slide which lit up your room green, and they went outside and it was Go Green for Grenfell. And so we lit our sitting room up last night green. You go outside and take a picture of your green room. You know, once again, that's one of those moments that, you know, we commemorate, we pass by, and then you hear the other day that there are still so many buildings with that cladding on the outside, and the countless inquiries, you know, ongoing thought. Nothing's happened.
I think, Philip, when it comes to the cladding on that building, you might ask, why has the inquiry gone on so long? The reason is that everybody has to put their point of view, and if any criminal charges are to be brought for gross negligence or corporate manslaughter, you've got to allow everybody to put in their point of view. And in some countries, architects, engineers and councils have been, you know, or local authorities have been prosecuted when buildings fail. But it's very, very rarely, if ever, happened in this country. Now, the cladding on that building was not designed to be used the way it was. And that ultimately is why that fire spread. So what I would hope to come out of the inquiry, no matter how long it takes, yes, is that someone carries the can for that decision to use that cladding in a way that it was not meant to be used.
Matthew?
2022 is when the inquiry is due to conclude. 2022 for a fire that began 3 years ago. The people of Grenfell there's an electric sign next to the A40, next to the tower, that I went past at 4 o'clock in the morning when it was burning, saying, "We're tired." And I can understand why they're tired. They're tired. I can't understand why, for example, when a man urinates on a statue, the Sunday papers tell us that you're going to get 10 years in prison for desecrating statues. That's an immediate reaction. But 3 years on from Grenfell, with another 2 years to go before we get any kind of answer, it's just not good enough. It's not good enough.
Oh, he will.
But Matthew, if the answer to it was that someone got prosecuted at the end of it, it would be worth it.
Yeah,
but we could do it quicker.
We have to leave it there, Matthew. Unfortunately, you just wonder whether something like that is worth a criminal record, or the limitations that will have on your future life for peeing. You know, what a stupid thing to do.
Thank you both.